Hello world, this is John, and this is Economy Class 909. So, I don't know much about economy. I've been doing a lot of personal research, and it's been like a maze because I was uneducated about finance and all that. I didn't go to school, I just had to figure everything out by myself, and to me, everything was kind of confusing. And as I slowly got into it more and more, I started to realize what is really going on. So you watch the movies like The Matrix, and you have the agents who are the feds. And I know that's a movie, but that does explain a lot about what's going on. Now, I know that's just a movie, and I'm not trying to say that we're all sources of energy, even though we kind of are a battery. But in the human world, let's actually get to what they're talking about. What they're talking about is the Federal Reserve decides what goes down. They're the big boss. They like to increase the interest rate, or they like to decrease it, depending on what they think needs to happen. And what's happening right now is they're saying that the interest rate or the CPI is 8.7%, and they want it to be at 2%, which is way off their target. Every year they just expect people to have 2% increase on their interest rate. What does this actually mean? It just means people are spending way too much money, which is a bad thing. I know sounds crazy. You're like, what? Businesses love people spending money. Money needs to flow. But this means people are spending way too much money. There's way too many people employed. People making money, people have too much jobs, and there's not enough resources. I know nobody likes to hear that, but if you look at a scale, if there's some stuff here like food, and you have money, there's only so much that you can put money onto it. There's only X amount of food, so eventually, if there's way too much money, which they're saying is there's way too much money for food and whatever, that means that they need to increase the interest rate so that people can have less jobs and basically get their money down so that there'll be more purchasing power, because if the way it works is the more there's money, the more that you have to use the money to pay for the same stuff. So they don't like that. So they're just trying to get it balanced out here. And basically what happens is we're right here right now. We are here. So they decided to increase their basis point by 0.75. I think we're at 4%, whatever, 4.2 or whatever percent right now. And 75 points means 0.75. It's almost a percent. Doesn't seem like much, but when I wanted to buy a car, for instance, the car dealership was giving me a 1.9% to borrow for 3 years. But recently, now I've been looking at the car interest, and they were asking about 6 or 8% now, which is a big difference. I mean, it doesn't seem like much, but when you think about the payments and the principal and the amount you pay every month, the the 6% makes a big difference towards the payment and how much you end up paying over time, which also works with the credit card. So, people who don't care about the inflation or the rules or what the Fed wants, they just want to do their own things. They're just going to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to sign up. If the credit card has 20% interest, 30% interest, 12%, I don't care. We don't care. We just want the stuff. They're going to borrow the money and they're going to get bad debt, which is going to lead to repos, because eventually the interest and the payments and all that's going to catch up to them. They're not going to be able to pay it. They're going to default. It's like bankruptcy, or they can't make payments, or they can't pay their house, or inflation is going up and their interest payment is up, so they can't afford their food and their car, so something has to give. But these guys, they don't care, so they just keep buying the bad debts, and then eventually after they lose their stuff, they realize money is king, and that's when they start just realizing, hey, you know what, I need to sell my stuff that I can't afford or downsize, and then they realize they want to stick with money. They don't want to get burned again with the interest and then fall through the cracks. So inflation gets tamed. People start spending less. They have because they have less money too from all the interest in the credit card, and hopefully they realize no more stupid credit card, or no more stupid debts. So they have to wise up. They have to get educated a little bit. I'm not saying I'm a genius or anything. I've done my share of idiotic things. And then there's the other part, there's the second group. These are the savers. They tell you, the savers who always say, you gotta save your money. But these guys always say, hey, what's the point of saving money if inflation is gonna burn your money? Well, the savers have their own solution, which is certificate of deposits, bonds, bills, and notes, which earn interest. So whatever money they have, it builds up. So if you put in like $1,000, right now they'll give you $1,090 in a whole year, because I think it was 9.62%. So basically, for putting $100, they'll give you $109. But that's the minimum that you could do. But most people do more than that. You could do up to $10,000, which will give them $962 on top of whatever the money they had. So while these people are falling behind, the savers have this opportunity to go to their safe havens and make money, or preserve their wealth. Yeah, of course, inflation is going to hurt everybody, because of course they always want that 2% inflation burn on everybody. However, they're also trying to give people 9.62%. So even if they're saying that the inflation right now, CPI report is 8.7, if they're giving out 9.62% through the I bonds, then you're actually winning by 0.9%. So you're actually winning if you put your money into I bonds. Logically, that's the whole thing. And not only that, they can lock in good rates, because usually historically, like, it's been like low 0% or less than 1% on saving accounts and CDs and bonds and stuff like that. And then they can usually get to 10-year, treasury notes or whatever. So for the next 10 years, they can lock in those 4% rates or whatever after this Fed, because that's a 10-year plan. So even if right now we're at 8%, next year, if the Fed does manage to bring it down to 2%, that 4% is going to be locked in for the rest of the 9 years. And they'll be actually profiting for the next 9 years for 2%. So that's one way the savers are going to make money and survive this thing and have a good nest egg for the long term. Not only that, and if they decide that they don't like the 4% and the economy corrects to the point where stock markets has gone down because people are running out of the cheap money, then they're gonna realize that the price per earning ratio goes down because when people have less money for the stocks, they're gonna stop putting less money, and once people have less money to spend, they're gonna put the company's gonna earn less money. So this ratio is gonna go wacky. It's gonna go up and down. It's gonna be influenced by 5 different things that I can think of, but it's just gonna be wild. It's gonna be like a bunch of kids running around in circles and hoping you could figure out what's going on. They're all like playing hide and seek. So that's how I can it's how I can explain this. I mean, of course you can guess some of it, and depending on what stock you're looking at, the price per earning ratio is gonna be determined how much research and how market goes and everything, and what stock you buy, if it's like a really stable one or whatever. But anyways, those savers that saved up money, for instance, I-bonds, and if they want to get out of it after the first year, then they can start picking up stocks, or actually, when the market churns, they could buy a house that pays the mortgage and builds equity, or they can buy a car if they want to, which is kind of a liability, but still, you need a car, so in the aftermath. But then if we move over to this side, this is the possible future when the Fed stops the hike. That's when people start realizing there's a slow realization that, hey, okay, we're not gonna have this problem no more, and things start stabilizing, because it's like like a wave. Because when things go up or down, there's that moment when it just hits that crest like a wave, and then it starts going down. And then if this was the baseline, it goes down because people generally, like, the Fed is fixing the interest rate, right? Because the interest rate is going up, obviously. So the Fed is going to try to bring this down. And once it starts going down, it's like a collapse. And not necessarily a scary collapse, but it does go down. And usually it does overcorrect. It's hard to, they try not to overcorrect. Ideally, you probably want to go like something like, like, hey, I'm going up, and oh yeah, just like that. But reality is that, people overcorrect, or just like overconsume or underconsume. So it's probably going to go down like that. And then that's your chance right there. And then once it slows down and hits that point, that's when you can get into that market. All right. So, and then, this is when you're paying kind of like a fair share. But between these 2 points, you can take action to monopolize or optimize that situation. So anyways, back to here. So once the Fed starts declining the interest rates, that's when I was talking about the slow realization. Once they stop doing that, then people are gonna have their last chance to buy, bonds, CD bills, pretty much to lock it in. They're gonna have to start turning over to spending money, because regular people are gonna start, getting encouraged to spend. Because we're gonna be in a time where people are like, no, we don't have any money. Nobody has money. Everybody's paying interest. Nobody has money. Credit's hard to get. So once we get a spanking, it's like just when you discipline a child, and the child's like, okay, I was misbehaving, but then you spank that child and the child shuts up, and then now you're like, okay, now he won't even say a word, and you actually want him to talk a little bit, but he won't say a word, but because you spanked him and you overcorrected. You want him to talk normal, but if he was acting up too much, and you spanked him, and then all of a sudden now he doesn't talk at all, then you got a problem. So you got to start, promoting. They're gonna start, businesses are gonna promote people to start spending more, and then they're gonna offer cheaper credit again, and then it's just like spring. People start spending money, they get happy again, and we try to keep it within the 2%, right? And that's for like that's an opportunity for you to know that once we start hitting this place, that's for you to maximize your last bonds and whatever you're gonna purchase, last lock-in rates, because then people are gonna start spending again, and then we're gonna go back to here. Because we go from this way to this way to this way to this way, back and forth we go. It's like a seesaw. So once they stop the hikes, jobs are gonna start coming back. People are gonna breathe a sign of relief. They're gonna think it's they're gonna get to the new normal. They've been living disciplined and humbled and not spending like crazy and eating at home and whatever. And then they're gonna get the jobs and celebrate and be like, okay, our troubled times is over. But we're not supposed to get cocky. We're supposed to stay meek and humble. But people realize, hey, we got jobs, so now we've been holding off on that birthday celebration and cake and vacation. But now that we got a job, yeah, maybe we could, after we pay off those bills, we could slowly start to spend again. And as the Fed's gonna keep monitoring that, as long as the inflation rate doesn't go up, or they're meeting their 2% rather than 8%, then they're gonna be like, okay, well, we don't have to do anything no more. And they're gonna back off, and we're gonna be on cruise control again. And then that's when commodity prices are gonna start to go back up, such as silver, because right now it's like at 18 or 19 bucks. And the savers who were into this and still didn't want to, we're in this situation where they're kind of encouraging you to spend, but they kind of got into stocks or whatever. Then they can start getting into other stuff like commodities, and then rotate. So that's basically what's going on with the whole economy. I know it seems a little bit confusing, but if you know the map and you know what's going on, then it kind of helps, because you don't want to be this guy, right now. Right now, you don't want to be signing up for debts. You don't want to be getting, burying yourself in debts or getting repoed or default, because that's your future. So you want to avoid that. So, you gotta navigate, like, depending on what these, like, this is like the parents, if the parents decide, hey, we need to do this, then you need to start, being over here. And if they decide they want to do this, then you need to start deciding to be here or here, So you gotta kind of, whatever they're doing, you just gotta kind of follow suit, If you want to do your own thing and be like, hey, we're gonna keep spending money like crazy, that's the reason why we got into this situation, right? Because people are spending money like it's crazy, like spending like, and it doesn't matter. They keep borrowing money and keep spending money. And of course, ultimately, you could factor that into saying, blaming it on a scapegoat, like the war with Russia or COVID. You could blame it on that, but blaming it doesn't really solve anything, or it's just a distraction. You don't learn anything. Because what this is, outside influences that happen, like COVID or Russia war or whatever, it doesn't mean, that we can still just keep on living the way we want to live. If something does, the situation changes, because the Fed is like the parent, Fed Reserve, so they gotta, whatever's happening in the world, like Russia or COVID or China or chip shortages or whatever that's happening, they're gonna bring it down the pipe and say, hey, kids, you need to tighten up. Businesses, you need to tighten up. Y'all need to figure this out, alright? This is a situation. Y'all need to figure this whole mess out. And then they're just like the parents, they're just gonna say, hey, or big brother, they're just gonna say, hey, y'all need to calm down. And if you don't listen, then you get punished by your parents. And this is our parents. And in between, businesses and companies, they're like the older brothers or uncles and whatever. And we're probably the bottom people. I'm like the bottom people. I don't make the rules. I don't care for the rules. I don't have to like it. I don't have to hate it. But I just have to I have to fall in line. So that's the whole spiel. I hope you learned something. That, the government and the Fed is up here just trying to tell us what to do and make sure that we all fall in line within a reasonable guidelines. And if you're hurting and suffering, and that sucks. And if you don't know what's going on, then that sucks too. But I hope this has helped you know what's going on. I know everybody has their own life and their own issues, but you're probably somewhere within this ballpark, It's like a community feel. And wherever you're at, if you're here, if you're in bad debt, then you need to figure out how to get out of that bad debt and move over to here. And if you're over here, then you're just good, But when the situation changes, then, you're going to have to move and adapt. So that's what you got to do. I mean, I think most people can stay here forever, but ultimately, eventually that starts kind of being detrimental and hurtful for you in your finances. But generally, that's like a safe play. But I know most people get bored because being humble and meek and just saving all the time, it gets boring. You get to live a little. So, some people start taking risks and gambling and stocks and borrowing bad debts and just living up their life a little bit. But everything takes moderation. Not only moderation, that's a good way to live your life, then you always just be somewhere in the middle because you're doing a little bit of everything. So you're never really getting ahead and you're never falling behind. But if you want to get more into this type of stuff, then you have to figure out this roadmap and then play the game. So it's like Monopoly, It's like Monopoly when you're a kid, everything's pretty colors and cartoon figures lined up, and you have a little silver car and little hat and whatever. But in real life, it just looks more like this. I mean, you could get into details, and I could probably discuss everything into more finer details, but this is just like a general map of understanding. So anyways, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed.